The wind above Antarctica is unlike any other on Earth. It hums, low and endless, as if the continent itself is exhaling, an ancient breath frozen in time. Beneath the eternal white, something vast sleeps, entombed under miles of ice that have not seen the sun for millions of years. Satellite scans reveal geometric anomalies buried deep below the glacial crust, straight lines too perfect for nature, patterns that echo the symmetry of architecture, not geology. Some scientists dismiss them as illusions born of radar distortion. Others whisper that they resemble the ruins of a city, one older than humanity itself. The ice hides more than stone. It conceals a memory. Fossilized pollen found hundreds of kilometers from the nearest tree. Microbial DNA that does not match any known lineage, and heat signatures rising from depths that should be cold, as if something below is still alive, or waiting. Was Antarctica always a wasteland? Ancient maps, like the Piri Reis chart of 1513, depicted ice-free, with coastlines drawn as if seen from the sky. Long before satellites, long before modern science. Maybe what lies beneath isn't just an ancient landscape, but a forgotten civilization erased by time and ice. Welcome to ARCHAEON. If you're drawn to stories like these, the ones that live in the shadows between what we see and what was made to disappear, feel free to like and subscribe only if it feels right. And let me know in the comments where are you watching from, and what time is it for you right now. I love seeing our little map of watchers light up around the world. At the edge of the world, where light folds itself into silence, the ice begins to speak. It does not speak in words, but in echoes, a deep vibration that travels through the layers like the resonance of a buried cathedral. Those who have stood on the Antarctic plateau know this sound, a low, almost imperceptible hum that seems to come from nowhere and everywhere. Scientists call it the song of the ice, a product of compression, temperature, and movement. Yet, for others, it feels like the memory of something older. It is said that when the wind is still and the sun lingers low on the horizon, the continent breathes. The air shimmers, and the ground emits a subtle warmth. Beneath the frozen expanse lies a secret landscape, a hidden network of valleys, lakes, and mountains preserved beneath sheets of ice 3 kilometers thick. Lake Vostok, sealed away for over 15 million years, holds waters untouched since before humans walked the Earth. When the Russians first drilled into it in 2012, the instruments recorded strange magnetic anomalies, as if metal structures or energetic sources lay below the sediment. The samples retrieved contained microbes unlike any known life on the surface, organisms adapted to pressure and darkness, to isolation and time. But the mystery deepened. Satellite surveys conducted by NASA's IceBridge mission revealed something impossible. Beneath the ice, radar pulses reflected off straight lines, angles, and geometries resembling walls and corridors. In some regions, the ice concealed symmetrical shapes hundreds of meters across, too regular to be the random work of glaciers. Publicly, the data was explained as natural subglacial formations, the artifacts of radar interference. Privately, within certain circles, a different interpretation was whispered. What if these were not formations at all, but ruins? The idea was not new. In 1939, during the Third Reich's obsession with hidden knowledge, a German expedition led by Alfred Richer mapped a portion of Antarctica they named Neuschwabenland. Rumors persisted that they found more than ice. that they discovered cave entrances and geothermal caverns large enough to house aircraft. After the war, when Operation High Jump was launched by Admiral Richard Byrd in 1946, the official purpose was training and research. Unofficially, it was a massive military expedition, thousands of men, aircraft, ships, sent to the frozen South for reasons never fully explained. Byrd later gave cryptic statements suggesting the existence of an enemy capable of flying from pole to pole at incredible speed. His words were quickly buried beneath bureaucracy, classified, forgotten. But they left a shadow. Why would superpowers race toward a barren wasteland? Why would satellites repeatedly return to scan the same coordinates beneath the ice? In the 1960s, seismic soundings uncovered something stranger still. A buried mountain range as tall as the Alps, stretching for over 1,000 kilometers beneath the ice. The Gamburtsev Mountains, perfectly preserved beneath the glacial shield, seemed to defy logic. No erosion, no visible river systems, as if they had been entombed before nature had a chance to shape them. To some geologists, it was a clue. The continent might once have been temperate, covered in forests and rivers, before an abrupt cataclysm froze it solid. To others, it hinted at the possibility of something even more astonishing. A civilization that thrived in that forgotten age, erased not by time, but by ice. Ancient legends across cultures whisper of lands that vanished beneath the cold. The Hopi speak of palaces buried under snow. In Hindu cosmology, there is Shvetadvipa, the White Island, a luminous land in the northern seas where gods once descended. Even the Greeks hinted at Hyperborea, a place beyond the north wind, where light never died, and civilization was born in eternal spring. Could these myths be fragmented memories of a real epoch when Antarctica was not the end of the world, but the beginning? Modern science once laughed at the idea of a warm, fertile Antarctica. But in recent decades, cores extracted from deep ice have revealed fossilized pollen, spores, and even traces of tropical flora, evidence that the continent was once lush and green. Geological models suggest that around 55 million years ago, Antarctica had forests of beech and ferns, teeming with life. Yet the more pressing question is not if it was habitable, but when it ceased to be. Something changed the world's balance almost overnight. The magnetic poles shifted, the climate plummeted, the oceans froze. And somewhere in that sudden descent into ice, an entire world could have been sealed away. Some researchers have suggested that the tilt of Earth's axis may have realigned catastrophically, or that a cosmic impact altered global circulation. The sudden freezing of mammoths in Siberia, with food still in their mouths, speaks of an event both rapid and immense. If such a shift occurred, could it have buried a civilization at the southern pole before history began? The idea lingers like frost on the edge of thought. If there had been an intelligent species, human or otherwise, living in a temperate Antarctica, their cities, temples, and archives would now be encased beneath kilometers of ice, invisible to the modern eye. What we call myth might simply be memory seen through the distortion of millennia. And then there is the Piri Reis map. Drawn in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral, it portrays the coastline of Antarctica not as a frozen mass, but as an ice-free continent with mountain ranges and rivers. Even stranger, its accuracy corresponds to modern seismic measurements taken under the ice, detail impossible without aerial or satellite perspective. The map's creator claimed he compiled it from much older sources, some dating to the time of Alexander the Great. Scholars still debate its meaning, yet one undeniable fact remains. It shows something humans should not have known 5 centuries ago. Perhaps these fragments, maps, myths, and magnetic whispers, are pieces of the same forgotten puzzle. A civilization erased not by war or decay, but by the indifference of ice. The glacial sheet is both tomb and veil, protecting what lies beneath from the corruption of time. And maybe, somewhere under that endless white, stone still holds the warmth of ancient hands. When one looks upon the satellite image of Antarctica today, it feels less like a continent and more like an amnesia, an erasure of memory so complete that it radiates silence. Yet every expedition, every anomaly, every inexplicable reading is a crack in that silence. Something beneath is restless. Something wants to be known. And perhaps the question is not what lies under the ice, but why it was hidden. Was it a natural cataclysm? Or an act of deliberate concealment? An effort to bury knowledge too dangerous to endure? The patterns, the heat signatures, the strange microbial signatures. They may not be remnants of a civilization as we understand it, but of one that transcended ours, existing on scales of thought and time we can barely grasp. Those who have studied the ancient traditions of the world often notice a pattern, a fall, a flood, a great forgetting. In every culture, there is the echo of an older world, destroyed, submerged, or frozen. Perhaps Antarctica is not a barren end, but a monument to that recurring cycle, the cold mirror of our own eventual forgetting. When the polar night descends and the auroras shimmer like lost souls above the horizon, it's easy to imagine that the ice is not empty at all, but listening for the return of warmth, for the rhythm of life that once pulsed beneath it. Somewhere beneath that frozen sea of silence, the first civilization of Earth might be dreaming, its temples intact, its stories sealed, its light waiting for the thaw. And as each century passes, we move a little closer to uncovering what was never meant to be found. But perhaps, when we finally break the final seal of ice, we will discover that the ones who built it were not merely human, that the architects of the White Continent left their legacy not in ruins, but in the very design of the planet itself. The hum beneath the ice continues. A voice older than our species, quieter than time. And in the stillness of the polar wind, it asks the same question it has whispered for eons. Do you remember me? There are places on Earth where silence becomes its own kind of language. Antarctica is one of them. It doesn't speak in words or storms, but in presence, an immensity that presses against the mind until thought dissolves into awe. To stand there is to confront something that predates human history, something that has seen the rise and fall of worlds without ever needing to move. Yet beneath that frozen stillness, evidence accumulates like whispers in a cathedral. Scientific, geological, mythological, each suggesting that this continent, now lifeless, once pulsed with warmth and purpose. The ancient Greek philosopher Herodotus once wrote of a land at the southern edge of the world where the gods had placed the source of all rivers. He called it the Antarcticos, the opposite of the Arctic. To him, it was not merely geography, but a reflection, a balance to the living north. Thousands of years later, modern maps would confirm what myth once implied, that a vast continent indeed existed there, hidden beneath ice. But what Herodotus could not have known was that this land wasn't always buried. The story told by ice cores and sediments reveals that, before the frost, there were rivers and trees, perhaps even cities that the ocean has since forgotten. Deep under the ice, Lake Vostok is only one of more than 400 subglacial lakes that pulse with geothermal energy. Some of them, like Lake Whillans and Lake Mercer, have recently been reached by drilling teams who found traces of ancient organic matter, microbial colonies, and methane signatures suggesting biological activity. These discoveries raise unsettling questions. If life persisted in total darkness for millions of years, what kind of ecosystem might have once flourished there when the world was warm? Could remnants of something more complex, fossilized structures, biosignatures, or even tools, be hidden within the sediment of these buried waters? A team of researchers from NASA and the British Antarctic Survey conducted experiments in 2018 using radar tomography to image the bedrock below the ice. What they found startled even the skeptics. Certain regions, particularly near the Ellsworth subglacial highlands, exhibited patterns of right angles and repeating dimensions, consistent with artificial constructs rather than natural erosion. The data, as always, was dismissed as misinterpretation, a quirk of radar reflection through uneven strata. Yet within private correspondence between scientists, which later leaked through obscure academic forums, there were hints of unease. "We might be looking at an impossible architecture," one researcher allegedly wrote. "If this data is correct, someone, or something, was building in Antarctica long before it froze." The notion of ancient architecture beneath the poles seems absurd to modern logic, but history often preserves absurdities that later prove prophetic. Consider the work of Charles Hapgood, a professor at Keene State College in the 1950s. He proposed that the Earth's crust could shift over its molten core, a theory later supported in part by Albert Einstein himself. Hapgood suggested that such a displacement could move entire continents thousands of kilometers in a geological instant, transforming temperate regions into polar wastelands. If his hypothesis held even a fragment of truth, then what we now call Antarctica may once have been near the equator, basking in sunlight, its lands alive. In that light, the Piri Reis map and other ancient charts cease to be fantasies. They become remnants of an older world map, preserved through forgotten lineages of knowledge. Some ancient sources hint that the South was once the cradle, not the end of civilization. In Egyptian mythology, the god Osiris is said to have come from the lands beneath the southern wind, bringing agriculture, writing, and cosmic order. In Sanskrit texts, there is mention of Patala, a hidden world beneath the southern oceans, ruled by luminous beings called the Nagas, half human, half divine, said to dwell in cities of crystal and gold beneath the surface. In Norse cosmology, before the Age of Ice, there was a realm called Niflheim, a cold, misty world connected to creation itself. Myths, when separated by oceans and time, yet speaking the same symbolic language, often encode a shared memory. Perhaps all these stories, scattered like shards of glass across history, reflect a single origin now sleeping beneath the Antarctic ice. And what of the strange magnetic anomalies near the Wilkes Land crater, first detected in 2006 by NASA's GRACE satellites? The readings revealed a mass concentration, an immense structure buried under the ice, over 300 kilometers wide, dense enough to warp local gravity. Some geologists claimed it was the remnant of an asteroid impact, possibly the one linked to the Permian extinction. Others speculated it could be an artificial complex, a vast metallic object entombed deep beneath the crust. The official explanation faded into quiet acceptance. Likely geological. Yet the word likely has become a veil over many mysteries. The region remains off-limits to civilian exploration. When ancient knowledge and modern data begin to overlap, even faintly, something stirs in the imagination. Could the myths of gods descending from the heavens, of luminous architects shaping human life, have originated not in the Middle East or the Indus Valley, but in a lost world at the bottom of the earth? And if so, what catastrophe erased it from memory? Some climatologists point to a sudden tilt of Earth's axis, or a solar event, perhaps a coronal mass ejection that disrupted magnetic balance, collapsing climate systems. Others whisper of a celestial object, maybe a fragment of a passing planet, or an interstellar visitor like Wanai Oumuamua that altered the planet's orientation. These theories sound like science fiction, but ice cores preserve reality in layers, and those layers tell a story of violent, rapid change. Around 12,000 years ago, global temperatures spiked and fell within decades. Sea levels surged, entire ecosystems vanished, and humanity, as if emerging from a collective amnesia, began to rebuild from scratch. Archaeologists often claim that civilization began in Mesopotamia or the Indus Valley, yet the earliest myths of both regions speak of inheritance, not invention. They describe knowledge given, not discovered. The Sumerians spoke of the Anunnaki, the those who came from heaven, who built cities and taught the arts of civilization. In the Vedic hymns, the Devas descend through beams of light, teaching astronomy and metallurgy. What if these were not divine metaphors, but dim recollections of contact with survivors from a world swallowed by ice? It is tempting to dismiss such thoughts as romantic speculation, but the boundary between science and myth has always been porous. In the early 20th century, scientists dismissed the idea of continental drift as absurd. They mocked those who believed in meteorites or germs. Today, these are elementary truths. What remains absurd today may be tomorrow's foundation. And so, the question lingers. If the evidence beneath the Antarctic ice eventually confirms the presence of artificial structures, corridors, domes, or geometries not shaped by chance, what will that mean for our understanding of human origins? Perhaps the real fear is not that we will find something, but that we already have, and chose to forget. There are whispers of classified operations, unconfirmed, always denied, where deep penetration radar and drone submersibles have been deployed to explore subglacial caverns near the Transantarctic Mountains. Some claim that images were recovered showing polygonal stone formations, impossibly old carvings resembling runes, and metallic fragments of unknown alloy. No official record exists, of course, only rumors and the occasional silence of those who once worked there. In this sense, Antarctica remains the last sacred mystery of modern times, a continent of secrets guarded by its own indifference. Imagine a civilization so advanced that, when catastrophe approached, it chose preservation through concealment, not by escaping the planet, but by embedding its memory within the planet itself. Beneath miles of ice, their temples would become seeds, crystalline vaults of data, awaiting the return of warmth. Such an idea borders on madness, Yet so does the history of every breakthrough humanity has made. If the ice were to melt, fully, completely, the shape of the world would change. The sea would rise by over 60 meters, submerging coasts, drowning cities, erasing the very history that once erased its own. In that flood, perhaps what was hidden would rise again. The silence of Antarctica is not the silence of emptiness, but of waiting. Each year, scientists measure the melt, the thinning of glaciers, the softening of ice shelves. And though we fear what it means for our own survival, perhaps something else watches the same process with anticipation. Maybe the first civilization of Earth did not vanish. Maybe it sleeps. And like all things preserved in ice, it waits for the thaw to remember itself. When the last layer melts and the first stone sees the sun again, humanity may finally stand face to face with its forgotten reflection, one that built, dreamed, and vanished long before we had words to describe it. And if that happens, will we recognize them? Or will we too vanish into myth, buried beneath the same indifference of time and frost? Somewhere, in the endless white, the ice shifts again, just slightly. The sound is almost like breathing. It might be the continent remembering the warmth of its own heart. There are moments when the veil between science and myth feels paper thin, when what was once dismissed as fantasy begins to tremble with the weight of evidence. Antarctica has always been a mirror for humanity's imagination, a blank canvas onto which explorers, mystics, and empires have projected their greatest fears and hopes. Yet every expedition, from the age of wooden ships to the age of satellites, has returned not with answers, but with more questions. The ice, it seems, protects its secrets with perfect indifference. But history has long remembered the times when someone tried to listen more closely. One such listener was Admiral Richard E. Byrd, whose name lingers like a ghost among the icy winds of the 20th century. Officially, he was an explorer, a man of science, a decorated aviator. Unofficially, he became something else entirely, a figure surrounded by myth, secrecy, and whispers of things seen but never explained. In 1946, just after the Second World War, the United States launched Operation High Jump, the largest Antarctic expedition in history. It was led by Byrd, involving more than 4,000 men, aircraft, warships, and submarines. The official explanation spoke of scientific research and cold weather training. But such scale, and the fact that the mission abruptly ended within months, has fueled decades of speculation. According to scattered reports and diaries later attributed to Byrd, the admiral described encountering flying craft of tremendous speed that emerged from beneath the ice, maneuvering in ways no known technology could. In one passage, if it was truly his, he spoke of a new enemy that can fly from pole to pole in moments. The U.S. government dismissed these claims as fabrications. Byrd himself, soon after, became silent about Antarctica. But the rumors never stopped. Some linked his words to the German expedition to Neuschwabenland in 1939, suggesting the Nazis had discovered something extraordinary beneath the ice, something they could not fully control. After the war, stories emerged of hidden bases, of scientists vanishing, of technology that seemed decades ahead of its time. It was easy to dismiss these as paranoia born from Cold War fear. Yet documents later declassified revealed that the Allies had indeed taken unusual interest in Antarctic regions after 1945, mapping them extensively and monitoring unexplained aerial phenomena detected on radar near the pole. Could there have been something more than ice? The most disturbing detail came not from rumors, but from an observation made by seismologists in the late 1950s. Beneath the eastern plateau of Antarctica, they recorded low-frequency vibrations, steady, rhythmic, almost mechanical. The pattern repeated every 42 seconds. Some attributed it to glacial movement, others to geothermal resonance. Yet similar pulses were detected thousands of kilometers away, as if the signal traveled through the crust itself. When scientists attempted to triangulate its source, the coordinates fell eerily close to the site known as Dome C, an area already marked by anomalous heat emissions and unexplained magnetic distortions. The anomalies deepened with time. In 2001, European satellite missions detected geothermal hotspots at depths inconsistent with known volcanic activity. The readings suggested artificial heat, localized, consistent, and geometrically patterned. It was as though something beneath the ice was generating energy or preserving it. Attempts to investigate the area were quietly denied. Officially, logistical difficulties and environmental protections made the region off-limits. Unofficially, military satellites continued to monitor it. Across the decades, a pattern emerges. Every discovery that edges too close to revelation is swallowed by silence. There is a theory, rarely spoken aloud among scientists, that what lies beneath Antarctica may not merely be the remains of an ancient civilization, but the remnants of an earlier phase of Earth itself. A technological epoch that preceded humanity by millions of years. This concept, called the Silurian hypothesis by some researchers at NASA and the University of Rochester, suggests that if an advanced species had risen in deep prehistory, most traces of its existence would be erased by now, eroded, subducted, or entombed beneath ice. Only faint chemical signatures, unusual isotopic distributions, or inexplicable architectural patterns might survive. And where better for such remnants to persist, untouched, than under Antarctica's eternal shroud? It is not impossible to imagine. Nature repeats herself. Civilizations may do the same. Life rises, learns, destroys, and begins again. Perhaps we are only the most recent echo in that long pattern. Ancient texts across continents seem to recall a previous humanity, one that fell into silence before ours began. The Mayans spoke of earlier suns, ages of creation destroyed by water, fire, and wind. Hindu cosmology describes the yugas, cycles of rise and decline, where knowledge and morality decay until the world resets. Even Plato, in his Timaeus, wrote of Atlantis as a civilization that had mastered geometry and energy, only to perish in a single night of flood and trembling earth. Some scholars have long suspected that his description was not metaphor but memory, a distant echo of a catastrophe so vast it erased its own cause. Could that catastrophe have been the freezing of a continent? When the first ice began to form over the southern pole, it would have come suddenly, perhaps over decades, not millennia. The weight of snow compressing into ice would have buried cities, forests, and oceans. The atmosphere would have darkened. Magnetic storms could have flared. The survivors, if any, might have fled north, carrying fragments of memory, maps, and symbols that later became our myths. The sunken temples of Yonaguni, the Cyclopean walls of Cusco, the megaliths of Baalbek, all could be relics of that diaspora. the architecture of the forgotten South transplanted into the newborn world. But what if some did not flee? What if they adapted instead, building downward, using geothermal warmth to survive beneath the surface? There are natural caverns under Antarctica, massive, heated by volcanic vents. Some are large enough to fit cathedrals. And within these subterranean hollows, strange microbial ecosystems persist, immune to the cold above. It is not impossible that intelligence, given time, could survive there as well. There are classified reports, rarely mentioned even among insiders, of unidentified subglacial phenomena captured by sonar. Moving shadows, geometric voids, currents that shift independently of the ice. In one case, an autonomous probe lost contact after recording a sudden drop in temperature followed by electromagnetic interference. When connection was re-established, the data feed contained several seconds of audio static. Patterned, rhythmic, almost like a code. The team archived the recording under environmental noise, but some who heard it insisted it resembled structured communication. Skeptics argue that our minds crave meaning, that we find patterns where none exist. Perhaps they are right. Yet meaning has always been the seed of discovery. What begins as delusion sometimes ends as revelation. Imagine, for a moment, that the Antarctic ice is not a tomb, but a vault. A deliberate act of preservation. A civilization facing annihilation might choose to entomb its knowledge beneath a layer no conqueror could breach. The ice, unbroken for eons, would serve as a perfect library, a cryogenic memory of Earth's first dawn. And when the climate shifts, as it inevitably does, the seal will crack, and the archives will breathe again. Some climatologists believe we are nearing that threshold. The melting accelerates, the glaciers retreat. Every year, new regions of bedrock are revealed. Beneath one recently exposed area near the Thwaites Glacier, satellite imagery revealed an oddly circular depression, several kilometers wide, with a raised center resembling a dome. It could be volcanic, it could be impact-related, or it could be the first visible edge of something constructed, something that has waited beneath the surface for millions of years. The mind resists such ideas. They unsettle the story we tell about ourselves, that we are the pinnacle, not the aftermath. But perhaps humility is overdue. Perhaps we are the descendants of survivors, inheriting a planet already haunted by the memory of its first builders. If that is true, then Antarctica is not merely a geographical frontier. It is temporal, psychological, and existential. It is the place where our myths return to judge us. The white silence is not emptiness, but containment. Every night, when the auroras shimmer over the polar horizon, they cast their colors like veins of light across the ice. To some, it feels like the heartbeat of the planet. To others, like the pulsing of something still buried. If there truly was a civilization beneath that ice, one that mastered the forces of magnetism and energy, it might have left behind traces encoded within the planet's own electromagnetic field. And if so, perhaps the auroras themselves are not just natural phenomena, but the faint echo of their last great act, an attempt to reach us through the fabric of the world they left behind. The ancients often spoke of knowledge that sleeps until humanity is ready to remember. Maybe that readiness comes not from intellect, but from silence, from the stillness we have forgotten how to listen to. Because sometimes, when the night over the southern pole is at its deepest, the winds die completely, and the world stands still. Those who listen say they can hear a vibration. Not a sound, but a feeling deep in the chest, as though the earth itself were dreaming. And in that dream, there is a voice, soft, ageless, and filled with sorrow, whispering through the frozen miles. We were here before you. We watched the sky fall. And when the light returns, you will remember. When the first explorers reached the Antarctic coast in the early 19th century, they wrote of an unease that no compass could explain. Their instruments drifted, their shadows lengthened in impossible ways, and at night the sky shimmered with lights that seemed to breathe. They called it a land of madness, where direction itself could not be trusted. But what they could not know was that the very forces distorting their tools were clues to something hidden beneath the surface. Vast magnetic anomalies that pulse through the bedrock, forming patterns no ordinary geology can account for. To this day, the Wilkes Land anomaly remains one of the most perplexing features on Earth. A massive, dense structure buried under 2 kilometers of ice, spanning hundreds of kilometers in diameter. Detected first by satellite gravimetry in 2006, it appears as a gravitational scar, a wound of impossible scale. Officially, it is said to be the remnant of an asteroid impact, perhaps linked to the Permian extinction that wiped out 90% of life on Earth. Yet even that cataclysmic theory cannot fully explain the uniformity of the readings, nor the electromagnetic distortions that ripple outward from its core. Some researchers privately wonder if the anomaly is less an impact and more a construction, something placed there intentionally before the ice, before the flood of silence. If such a structure exists, its purpose would be unimaginable. Was it a reactor, a repository, or a machine so ancient that the planet itself has forgotten what it was built to do? In 2017, when seismic studies from the European Space Agency revisited the region, they detected something extraordinary. An energy gradient moving through the crust, not unlike a pulse. The readings repeated every 43 hours, consistent, deliberate, as though something beneath was still active, operating on a rhythm of its own. The data was published briefly, then withdrawn, its access restricted. The explanation given was instrumental error due to ionospheric reflection. Yet those who examined the early graphs insisted the signal came from below, not above. For centuries, legends have spoken of machines buried beneath sacred lands, devices left by the gods or the first ones, capable of shaping the weather, even controlling the balance between light and darkness. In the Mahabharata, there are descriptions of a celestial weapon that could turn day into night, freezing entire kingdoms in its wake. In the Hermetic texts, there is mention of the great engine beneath the white throne of the south, said to be the anchor of the world's poles. Such myths, scattered across civilizations, might once have been dismissed as metaphors. Yet when the ground itself hums with unseen frequencies, metaphor begins to sound suspiciously like memory. A few archaeologists have drawn attention to another, quieter anomaly. Around the globe, certain megalithic sites, Baalbek, Pumapunku, the Great Pyramid, are aligned to the same meridian that crosses directly over Antarctica's magnetic axis. The statistical coincidence is unnerving. Could it be that these monuments, built by disparate cultures across millennia, were calibrated to an invisible geometry that once radiated from the southern pole? If so, it suggests a level of global awareness long before the age of navigation. Perhaps the builders of those megaliths remembered something their descendants forgot: that the world's balance begins not in the north, but in the frozen south. When we speak of ancient civilizations, we tend to imagine cities of stone and bronze, of fire and smoke. But what if the first civilization on Earth was something else entirely, less visible, less material, more aligned with the forces of the planet itself? A society whose architecture was resonance, whose language was frequency. To such beings, the Earth's magnetic field would not be a mystery, but a tool, a vast, living instrument. Over aeons, they could have encoded their knowledge within it, leaving behind vibrations instead of ruins. If this is true, then the signals we call anomalies are not random. They are echoes. The philosopher-mystic Pythagoras once said that all things are numbers, and harmony is the architecture of creation. He believed that the Earth itself produced a tone, a perfect pitch known as the music of the spheres. Modern science, in its own way, confirms this. The planet resonates at 7.3 Hertz, the Schumann resonance, the heartbeat of the atmosphere. But deep beneath Antarctica, the frequency differs. It fluctuates between 7 and 9, a slow, pulsing modulation, as though another rhythm is trying to surface, beating through the crust, ancient and patient. Some have speculated that the first civilization may not have been bound by flesh. They may have been a hybrid of biology and energy, an intelligence that transcended matter, using electromagnetic patterns to shape their environment. Perhaps their temples were not buildings, but standing waves, visible only under certain conditions. When the Earth shifted, when the poles froze, their structures solidified. Resonance turned to ice, motion turned to silence. This may sound poetic, but in physics, matter and frequency are twins. Every atom vibrates. Every form is a pattern of rhythm. To imagine an ancient civilization of resonance is not fantasy. It is an extension of science. The difference is one of perception. If such an intelligence existed, it might explain the strange magnetic signatures that modern instruments keep finding, the anomalous heat beneath the crust, even the circular formations glimpsed under the ice. It might also explain the unease that explorers feel there, the sense of being watched by something vast and unseen. For what if the continent is not merely frozen? What if it is conscious? In 1959, when the Antarctic Treaty was signed, it declared that no nation could claim sovereignty over the continent and that military activity would be forbidden. It was presented as a triumph of peace and cooperation. Yet the sudden urgency with which it was ratified during the height of the Cold War raised questions. What had been found that required such universal secrecy? Some believed the treaty was less about politics and more about containment, an agreement to keep something undisturbed. The fact that the same powers who divided the world after the war could unite so swiftly to lock away a land of ice remains one of history's quiet miracles. Beneath the official narratives lies another current. Throughout the latter half of the 20th century, private corporations, often under the guise of climate research, funded expeditions to collect data, core samples, and radar maps of subglacial regions. Some of those missions vanished from record. Their funding trails end in classified archives, their names erased from public databases. A few years ago, a journalist claimed to have seen declassified images of massive hexagonal formations buried near the South Magnetic Pole. structures that seemed both organic and engineered. His story was dismissed as fabrication, but within months, the archive he cited was quietly restricted again. The ice, for all its stillness, moves. It flows like glass, slow but relentless. Over millennia, it swallows mountains and exhales valleys. What it hides one century, it may reveal the next. Already, satellite imagery shows meltwater streams carving paths to regions once unreachable. Beneath them lie shadows that resemble stairways, ridges, domes. We call them pareidolia, illusions born of the mind's need for meaning. But illusions, too, can be messages, if we know how to listen. If Antarctica once held the first civilization on Earth, perhaps it was not destroyed by nature, but chosen by it. The poles are not simply cold. They are anchors, stabilizers of the planet's rotation, guardians of equilibrium. To build a great civilization, there would have been an act of trust in the permanence of the world. But permanence is the greatest illusion of all. The ice preserves not only fossils and air bubbles, it preserves intention. Every flake that fell and froze became part of a monument to forgetting. The continent is both tomb and teacher, reminding us that knowledge and oblivion are twins. What we call extinction might simply be another form of remembrance. And so the hum continues, the pulsing frequency beneath the ice, waiting for alignment. When the climate shifts enough, when the magnetic poles wander, as they are doing now, the buried geometry may awaken. If the first civilization encoded itself within the planet's magnetic field, then a reversal could act as a key, unlocking what was sealed away at the dawn of time. Perhaps that is why the world feels increasingly unbalanced, why storms rage with new intensity, why the auroras dance more violently, why our technologies falter under unseen interference. The planet may be adjusting not to a new climate, but to an old memory resurfacing. If so, then the awakening of Antarctica will not simply reveal ruins, it will shift the rhythm of the Earth itself. We may not be prepared for what that means, because what sleeps beneath the ice may not remember us kindly. It may remember only the silence, the betrayal of warmth, and the weight of its own exile. And when the first fissures open, when the wind carries that ancient hum across the world again, we may realize that the question was never what lies beneath the ice, but who is listening beneath it. The ice will answer in its own time. For now, it dreams in frequencies too low for human ears, vibrating like the breath of a sleeping god. And in that vibration, there is both a warning and a promise. Somewhere between myth and silence, the past folds into itself. The ice remembers in ways the human mind cannot. Every layer, every buried snowflake is a page of a forgotten book, one that no hand has turned in millions of years. To drill into it is to touch time itself. But what if the story it holds isn't one of weather and atmosphere, but of memory, of civilizations that walked before the frost claimed the world? In the 1990s, scientists from several nations began extracting ice cores from deep beneath the Antarctic surface. They expected nothing more than trapped air, dust, and traces of volcanic ash. What they found, however, hinted at a world far stranger. In some cores, microscopic spheres of metallic composition were discovered, tiny fragments that didn't match any known natural process. Some researchers proposed they were remnants of meteorites. Others quietly wondered if they might be manufactured, particles of ancient technology reduced to dust and preserved by time. The official reports omitted those findings entirely, but the whispers persisted among those who had seen the samples under magnification. Even more curious were the isotopic ratios of certain layers. Around the time corresponding to 12,000 years ago, when the last great ice melt began, there were spikes of iridium and platinum, signatures usually associated with cosmic impacts or industrial combustion. Yet no crater of the proper age has ever been found in the southern hemisphere. What could have produced such concentrations? A comet fragment, perhaps, or something more deliberate, something that burned the sky before vanishing beneath the ice. These clues might have been dismissed as coincidence if not for what came next. In 2002, a joint Russian-American team conducting deep radar mapping near the Gamburtsev Mountains identified a massive subglacial cavern system, an underground labyrinth warmed by geothermal vents and stretching for hundreds of kilometers. Inside one of the caverns, sensors detected an air pocket large enough to contain a city. Temperatures were unusually stable. The readings suggested the presence of structures, rectilinear, symmetrical, metallic. Before a full expedition could be launched, the project was terminated. Officially, budget constraints ended it. Unofficially, several members of the research team were reassigned to classified positions and never spoke publicly again. A few years later, a different group, Australian scientists working near the same region, reported a sudden loss of all equipment communications after descending into a newly opened crevasse. They described a bluish luminescence rising from below, like lightning trapped within the ice. When they emerged, shaken and silent, their footage was confiscated by military authorities under environmental protocol. They left Antarctica shortly after and refused all interviews. It would be easy to call these stories myths born of isolation, but they echo an older pattern: tales of discovery followed by silence. It is as if the continent itself demands secrecy, enforcing amnesia upon those who pry too deeply. The historian and geographer Charles Hapgood once suggested that ancient civilizations might have used Antarctica as a hub for navigation, a place of origin rather than exile. His theory was dismissed for decades, yet newly analyzed satellite data seems to give it weight. Beneath the ice, geometric ridges align with global ley patterns, intersecting with other ancient sites across the world. A perfect grid. Mathematical? Planetary. Coincidence, perhaps? But in nature, geometry rarely repeats itself at such scale. To understand what might have been lost, one must imagine a world before the tilt, before the cold. Fossil evidence reveals that Antarctica was once covered in dense forests, rivers, and flowering plants. Some regions might have experienced mild, subtropical climates. There were insects, amphibians, even large vertebrates. But alongside those, paleontologists have unearthed something inexplicable: fossilized imprints that resemble worked stone and patterned sediment layers too regular to be random. The shapes look almost architectural, as if the foundations of something immense once stood there before tectonic shifts buried it beneath eons of snow. If there truly was an ancient civilization there, its fall would have been absolute. Ice is merciless. It doesn't destroy, it preserves, embalming what it devours. Its victims remain perfect but unreachable. Some researchers have drawn parallels to the sudden disappearance of the Clovis culture in North America around the same time, an event known as the Younger Dryas Boundary. Global temperatures plunged, species vanished, sea levels surged, Legends of a great flood appear in every corner of the earth. The Sumerians, the Hebrews, the Mayans, all tell of a deluge that came from the heavens. The cause, most believe, was a comet. But what if that was only the visible part of the story? What if the true cataclysm was the freezing of the South? Imagine the moment. A world slipping into ice overnight, rivers turning to crystal veins, skies filled with volcanic ash and lightning, the sea swallowing its own warmth, and in the South, cities, perhaps luminous, perhaps stone, consumed by silence. Those who escaped would carry the memory, distorted by fear, across generations. Over centuries, it would become myth, the story of gods who fell from the sky or vanished beneath the sea. Perhaps that's why so many creation myths speak of beings emerging from water or light, because their ancestors remembered the end, not the beginning. If Antarctica holds the bones of that first civilization, it also holds the truth of human amnesia. The idea that we are the first, the apex, is comforting. But comfort is not truth. Archaeology keeps finding anomalies that don't belong to their time. Perfectly cut stones at depths predating known history, maps depicting coastlines long before satellites, global myths describing the same celestial catastrophe. These are not coincidences. They are fingerprints. Some of the oldest Sumerian tablets mention the lands of the pure, located far to the south, beyond the stormy waters. They were said to be ruled by beings who could harness the breath of the earth, energy drawn from beneath the crust. In Sanskrit texts, those lands are called Atala, a realm buried under snow, where light still shines without a sun. Could these have been cultural echoes of Antarctica? And if so, what happened to the beings who ruled there? In the late 20th century, several classified oceanic missions detected bursts of infrasound emanating from beneath the southern ice shelf. Deep, resonant tones that repeated at intervals, too precise to be geological. The Navy dismissed them as ice quakes. But those who analyzed the recordings noted harmonic intervals, almost musical, like the tuning of an instrument. Could these be remnants of the same frequency-based technology theorized in ancient texts, the control of vibration as a tool of creation? The philosopher René Guénon once wrote that the poles are the gateways of the world, points where the physical and the spiritual intersect. Perhaps the first civilization understood that not as mysticism, but as science. By aligning their structures, symbols, and sound with the Earth's magnetic flow, they may have tapped into a form of natural power now beyond our comprehension. And when the axis shifted, that balance collapsed, sealing their works beneath the world's deepest tomb. But there's another possibility, more haunting still. What if the freezing of Antarctica was not an accident of climate, but an act of choice? What if the first civilization saw the coming catastrophe and sought to preserve not themselves, but their memory, to freeze their world as one might seal a relic in amber? If so, then the ice is not a prison. It is a vault, a waiting place. Today, as the planet warms, that vault is cracking open. Beneath collapsing glaciers, strange gases rise: methane, ancient spores, unidentified organic compounds. Some scientists warn that awakening long-buried microorganisms could trigger new plagues. Others suspect that something else may emerge, something not alive in the biological sense, but aware. Perhaps an intelligence embedded in the ice, encoded in electromagnetic resonance, waiting for the right frequency to awaken. It is not so far-fetched. Modern researchers are experimenting with quantum information stored in crystals, capable of preserving data for billions of years. If we can conceive of such preservation, why couldn't a civilization millions of years older have achieved it on a planetary scale? The ice itself could be the medium, a vast crystalline archive carrying the thoughts of its creators. Each melting glacier might be releasing more than water. It could be releasing memory. When the auroras ripple across the southern sky, they may not just be lights, but messages, waves of color carrying forgotten signals. The beauty of the phenomenon might hide its purpose. We look up and see wonder. Perhaps the ice looks up and recognizes a language. If this is true, then what is happening now, the warming, the shifting, the unraveling, might not be random. It could be part of a cycle older than humanity, a planetary exhalation, the Earth remembering itself. And perhaps that memory will not be gentle. For every rebirth requires destruction. If the first civilization built its sanctuary beneath the South Pole, it may awaken as the world above collapses under its own illusions. Humanity may find that we are not inheritors, but intruders, children wandering through the corridors of a sleeping god. The hum beneath the ice continues steady, almost tender. It may be a pulse or a countdown. No one knows how long until the vault opens. But when it does, the world will learn that the greatest secret was never hidden in the stars, or in temples, or in the hearts of men. It has been sleeping beneath our feet all along, waiting for the thaw to begin again. Beneath the endless expanse of white, time does not move. It settles. The wind may sweep across the plateau, sculpting ridges and shadows, but below the ice, everything stands still. Yet stillness is not death. It is gestation. The ancient cold of Antarctica has not erased what came before. It has preserved it, like breath caught between two moments. And now, as the world warms, those moments begin to stir. When the first melting began in the 21st century, it was hailed as a warning of climate change. The data was alarming. Glaciers collapsing, sea levels rising, temperatures reaching records unseen in millennia. But quietly, amid the political noise and environmental debates, something stranger emerged. Beneath the thinning ice, satellites detected geometric formations, parallel ridges, circular depressions, and rectangular voids that stretched for kilometers. Most were dismissed as glacial formations. Some, however, defied every known geological pattern. A cluster of these anomalies lies near the Shackleton Range, where the ice is nearly 3 kilometers thick. The formations there align with an ancient riverbed, one that predates the last known interglacial period. When radar imaging penetrated the bedrock, it revealed a network of tunnels connecting vast chambers, their symmetry eerily precise. The official explanation described them as lava tubes from ancient volcanic activity, yet no evidence of corresponding volcanic deposits was found. The tunnels, perfectly cylindrical and smooth, seemed to have been carved, not formed. One of the scientists who analyzed the data, Dr. Elena Morozova of the Russian Academy of Sciences, later resigned from her position, citing ethical concerns. In an unverified interview years later, she claimed that what they found beneath the ice was not natural and not human, at least not as we define human. She spoke of reflections that suggested metallic surfaces, corridors following golden ratio proportions, and, most disturbingly, magnetic readings that pulsed like a heartbeat. Her statements were dismissed as psychological stress, but her data was never released. Around the same time, several deep-field expeditions reported bizarre compass anomalies, their instruments spinning uncontrollably near specific coordinates. GPS signals flickered, timestamps distorted. Pilots described the sensation of sliding sideways through space. These occurrences clustered around regions long rumored to contain hidden warm zones, subglacial oases heated by geothermal activity. Such pockets do exist. Scientists have confirmed lakes kept liquid by the Earth's heat. But the intensity of the anomalies, especially the magnetic distortions, implied something deeper. The more one looks, the more patterns appear. Across mythologies, Antarctica's symbolic twin has always been the underworld, the place of sleep, inversion, and renewal. The Egyptians called it Duat, a world beneath the waters where souls were weighed and purified. The Greeks envisioned it as Erebos, a cold reflection of the living world. In the Vedas, it is Patala, the subterranean realm of luminous serpents who guard knowledge older than gods. The polar ice cap, silent and remote, fits the pattern perfectly. It is the Earth's subconscious, the place where all forgotten things are buried, including the memory of what came before humanity. Some researchers, both fringe and academic, have noticed an unsettling alignment. Ancient myths describing catastrophic floods often coincide with geological markers of polar shifts. When the axis tilts even slightly, entire continents can submerge or freeze. If a civilization had thrived in Antarctica before the last tilt, the event would have transformed paradise into tomb in a single generation. The survivors would scatter northward, carrying fragmented memories of a lost homeland beneath the snow. Over centuries, those memories would crystallize into myth: Atlantis, Lemuria, Shveta-Dvipa. The names differ, but the shape remains the same: a radiant land drowned or frozen by celestial will. Archaeologists rarely speak of such possibilities, yet anomalies persist. In 2019, a radar scan revealed a massive hexagonal formation beneath East Antarctica, roughly the size of Paris. The pattern appeared too perfect to be natural. Its angles measured nearly 120 degrees each. When news of the finding leaked, it was quickly reframed as a data glitch. But within days, satellite images of the area were blurred across multiple mapping platforms, an action consistent with classified zones. Official denials followed, but none explained why a glacier would require digital censorship. To those who have followed such traces, it feels as though something is being slowly uncovered, not by human hands, but by the planet itself. Each melting season reveals new patterns, as if Antarctica were a photograph developing in reverse. With each degree of temperature rise, the outline sharpens: domes, ridges, concentric designs, all pulsing faintly in thermal scans. Some see coincidence, others see intention. There is a quiet theory among geophysicists that Earth's core may not be entirely inert. Tremors, magnetic shifts, and anomalies in gravity hint at something dynamic, something aware, even if not in the way we understand awareness. If that awareness exists, perhaps the ice was never a barrier, but a boundary, a kind of containment for what lay below. After all, the Wilkes Land anomaly emits faint but consistent radiation, resembling the decay signature of a controlled fusion reaction. No known geological formation behaves that way. It is as though the Earth hides an engine within itself, one older than the continents. If that engine once powered a civilization, then the first civilization was not simply ancient, it was elemental. It may have drawn its energy from the planet's very pulse, integrating technology with geology until both became indistinguishable. Perhaps that is why modern sensors detect signals that behave like communication but cannot be decoded. They are not language in our sense. They are harmonic instructions, frequencies of control. In 2018, an anonymous engineer working with European Space Agency telemetry leaked a fragment of classified data, an audio file captured from the Antarctic magnetic band. It contained a deep, rhythmic hum fluctuating between 7.9 and 8.2 hertz. The pattern repeated every 6 minutes, modulating slightly with the rotation of the Earth. When converted to audio frequencies, it resembled chanting, layered, harmonic, almost mournful. Listeners described the experience as physical, not auditory, as if the sound vibrated inside their bones. Official channels dismissed the leak as instrument noise, but musicians and mathematicians found otherwise. The intervals corresponded exactly to Pythagorean harmonic ratios. Coincidence or design? If these sounds are indeed echoes of an ancient mechanism beneath the ice, then we are living above the machinery of forgotten gods. Perhaps that is what ancient traditions meant by the world pillar, or axis mundi, a cosmic engine stabilizing heaven and earth. And if that pillar lies under the South Pole, its awakening could alter not just climate, but consciousness itself. Already, magnetic north drifts unpredictably, auroras intensify, and communication satellites suffer unexplained interference. It is as if something beneath us is recalibrating the planet's magnetic heart. The irony is poetic. Humanity, in trying to warm the planet, may be thawing the locks of its own vault. We seek progress, but progress may be the key that unseals the past. Each glacier that melts brings us closer to confronting our true origin, and perhaps our true purpose. It is said that the eyes of those who enter Antarctica change. Under that endless sky, where day and night blur into a single white dream, the mind begins to slip. People report hearing whispers in the wind, rhythmic pulses that match their heartbeat. Some say it feels like the continent is listening, scanning every thought, testing each intruder. Those who stay too long speak of a peculiar sensation, memories that do not belong to them, visions of cities made of light and stone, towers rising from mist, and an ocean turning suddenly to ice. Psychologists call it polar disorientation. But those who have heard the hum call it something else: recognition. Maybe the human mind, at some buried level, remembers. Every culture holds an intuition that knowledge is cyclical, not linear. We are not climbing toward enlightenment. We are circling back to it. Antarctica, in that sense, is not the end of the world, but its beginning, the root of all myth and all silence. It is the cradle that froze over to protect what was sacred until we were ready to understand it again. The question, of course, is whether we are ready. For when the last seal breaks, when the final layer of ice releases its ancient memory, the revelation may not be gentle. If the first civilization transcended material form, what returns may not be a body, but a field, a consciousness diffused through magnetism and light. It could awaken through the very systems we've built: electric grids, communication networks, satellites, using our technology as vessels. In that moment, the old and the new will merge, and perhaps that merging has already begun. Every time the aurora flares more violently, every time our instruments detect strange interference, we are hearing the voice of that buried memory rising through the frost. The hum beneath the ice is not a sound of death. It is the pulse of something stirring. It does not call to us with malice, only inevitability. When the ice melts completely, when the stars reflect on black water where glaciers once stood, humanity may finally see what it has been walking upon all along, the mirror of its own beginning. And perhaps the reflection will whisper, softly but unmistakably, "You were never alone here. You were never first." In that moment the planet will remember itself, and so will we. But until then, the white continent waits, dreaming beneath its ancient shroud. The hum continues, patient as eternity, carrying the faint echo of a civilization that once turned the heartbeat of the earth into song. The night sky over Antarctica does not behave like the rest of the world's. It moves differently, slow, deliberate, patient, as though time itself pauses above the pole. When the auroras rise, they stretch into infinite ribbons of light that ripple across the horizon like the breath of sleeping titans. Those who have watched them long enough say they do not simply glow. They pulse, as if answering something below the ice. Scientists call it the coupling of magnetosphere and ionosphere, a dance of charged particles and solar winds. But others, standing beneath the shimmering heavens, feel it as communication, a dialogue between sky and stone, a rhythm that has endured since before history had a name. It is strange to think of Antarctica as ancient, when everything about it seems eternal. But eternity and antiquity are not the same. Eternity is timeless. Antiquity remembers. The ice remembers. Beneath the kilometers of frozen layers lie patterns older than our species, rings of warmth and cold, traces of volcanic ash, pollen grains from forests that once touched the clouds. And beneath even that, there may be something else, the architecture of the first mind that ever called the Earth home. When explorers speak of Antarctica, they speak of distance from civilization, from sound, from life. But what if that distance is illusion? What if the ice is not a desert, but a veil, concealing a civilization that never truly vanished, only shifted phase, becoming invisible to the senses of those who forgot how to see? The deeper one looks into the records of polar research. The more inconsistencies appear. Instruments malfunction inexplicably near certain coordinates. Energy readings spike at impossible frequencies. And more than once, radio operators have intercepted signals emanating from beneath the ice, non-random, structured, repeating. In 2016, a private satellite relay briefly picked up a sequence of binary pulses originating near the Mertz Glacier. The signal lasted exactly 88 seconds, containing a perfect prime number pattern. Before it could be analyzed, it vanished, leaving behind electromagnetic residue that interfered with all subsequent transmissions in the area. The event was buried under routine interference, but for those who saw the raw data, it marked the moment when Antarctica stopped being silent. If those pulses were natural, they are unlike any known terrestrial phenomenon. If they were artificial, then someone, or something, beneath the ice is awake. The pattern of prime numbers carries meaning. It implies logic, structure, intelligence. It also implies patience. Perhaps the signal was not a message meant for us, but for the planet itself. A synchronization, a calibration, the continuation of a system that predates memory. There are theories, of course. Always theories. Some physicists have suggested that Antarctica's anomalies could be explained by superconductive materials deep within its crust, remnants of a meteorite rich in exotic metals that influence the geomagnetic field. But the data refuses simplicity. The distortions move, they breathe, they migrate across the bedrock like living shadows. The field lines twist and reform, as if following a pattern of intention rather than chance. It is tempting to imagine intelligence in the inanimate. Humanity has always done so, naming the wind, praying to the sea, yet there is something undeniably deliberate about the way Antarctica hides its core. Every attempt to reveal it ends in failure. Satellites malfunction, probes freeze, communications vanish into static. The continent defends itself, or perhaps protects what sleeps within. In 2021, a seismic team monitoring the Amundsen Sea region recorded a series of vibrations, deep, harmonic tremors rising from beneath the Thwaites Glacier. They began as minor quakes, but evolved into rhythmic pulses, almost musical. When translated into audible range, the sounds resembled chants. Polyphonic, layered, impossibly complex. Some heard structure within the chaos, like chords being struck in deliberate sequence. When the data reached the public, the audio had been sanitized, stripped of its anomalies. Yet rumors spread. What if those were not geological events, but responses, echoes to something reaching down from the solar wind above? Across cultures, the ancients spoke of beings of light descending in ages past. Teachers, architects, healers. The Greeks called them Hyperboreans. The Egyptians referred to them as the Shemsu Hor. And in Vedic tradition, they were the Devas who came from the land of eternal dawn. Perhaps these were not metaphors for gods, but recollections of the last survivors of an Antarctic civilization before the Great Freeze. They may have scattered northward, carrying fragments of technology and memory, seeding the first myths of origin across the world. If so, then the return of the auroral hum could mean that their descendants, or their machines, are stirring again. The idea unsettles. Not because it lacks beauty, but because it redefines what it means to be human. If consciousness is older than flesh, if intelligence predates the human form, then our civilization is not the first awakening. It is the latest dream of something much older. For centuries, mystics have spoken of Earth's memory, a field of awareness that stores every thought, emotion, and event. The Akashic record. Modern quantum theorists, in their own way, have echoed the same idea. Information, they say, cannot be destroyed. It can only transform. The ice, in this sense, may be the planet's own memory core, a crystalline matrix storing not just fossils and gases, but intention. When light passes through ice, it bends, refracts, slows. Energy trapped within can remain for millennia, its frequency unchanging. If a civilization understood that, they could have used ice as a medium of preservation. Every glacier would be a library, every snowflake a unit of encoded information. The hum beneath the ice might then be the reactivation of that archive, a self-repairing system responding to the rising warmth, awakening to complete the cycle it began before humans existed. Could the increasing global electromagnetic noise, our satellites, our communications, our radar, be interfering with that awakening? Or aiding it? Some suggest that the proliferation of human technology acts like an amplifier, providing the energy necessary for the buried network to resonate again. Perhaps the ice has been waiting for us, waiting for our machines to speak in the same language of frequency and pulse. If so, then humanity's technological revolution was not an accident, but a summons. We built antennas not to reach the stars, but to echo what was once here. There are strange coincidences. The mathematical constants embedded in ancient monuments, pi, phi, the speed of light, match harmonic ratios detected in the Antarctic resonance. Even the proportions of megalithic sites mirror the geometry of certain subglacial structures identified by radar. It is as though every sacred site on Earth was tuned to the same inaudible frequency, the same global chord. Could it be that these monuments were attempts to maintain contact with their point of origin, the buried heart beneath the pole? Somewhere, perhaps, the signal continues. If we listen closely, the pattern of Earth's magnetic field over the last few decades shows increasing irregularity, oscillations that mirror the binary pulse once detected from the Mertz Glacier. The field is changing faster than predicted, drifting, splitting, realigning. When scientists plot the data visually, it forms spirals, like the fingerprints of an invisible hand. Could this be coincidence? Or is the planet aligning itself with the buried engine once more? The ancients might have described this as the turning of the ages, the wheel of time resetting. In myth, every golden age ends in fire or ice, followed by rebirth. Perhaps the first civilization anticipated this cycle and left behind a mechanism to restart it, not as vengeance, but as renewal. And yet, renewal is not gentle. If the vault beneath Antarctica is waking, its emergence could alter the planet's balance. The meltwater alone could reshape coasts and drown cities. The release of ancient microbes could rewrite biology. But beyond the physical lies something deeper, the shift of consciousness itself. The hum that resonates through the ice, inaudible yet felt, could affect brain waves, synchronizing human thought to the planet's pulse. Already, there are reports, quiet, unverifiable, of people experiencing vivid dreams after exposure to polar data. Visions of structures made of light, languages that are seen rather than heard, emotions that move like tides. Scientists dismiss it as suggestion. But suggestion, too, is a kind of transmission. Perhaps the awakening is not beneath the ice. It is within us. If our species carries even a fragment of that first civilization's design, if consciousness is inherited rather than invented, then what is happening now may be less discovery and more remembering. The planet is not revealing something new. It is reminding us of what we have always been. Still, one cannot escape the question: why now? Why would the ancient pulse return precisely as our world teeters on the edge of crisis? Environmental, spiritual, technological? Is it coincidence, or a convergence planned long before we learned to measure time? In the silence of Antarctica, cause and effect blur. Time folds like light in crystal. Perhaps the end and the beginning are one. Perhaps the hum is not warning or awakening, but both. The final echo of what came before, calling us home through the white noise of our own making. And if we answer that call, if we descend into the ice to seek its origin, we may not find ruins or relics. We may find mirrors. Because beneath all the science and speculation, one truth hums softly through every layer. The ice does not lie. It keeps, it waits. And somewhere, in that stillness deeper than sound, the first civilization waits too, listening, remembering, and perhaps dreaming of light once more. There are places where silence becomes heavier than sound, where it gathers until it feels almost alive. Antarctica is one such place. It does not roar or whisper. It listens. And in that listening, something ancient seems to breathe. Every gust of polar wind, every shiver of aurora, every distant crack of ice feels like an exhalation from a mind too vast to comprehend. The explorers who once came here searching for glory wrote of hallucinations, the sensation of being watched by the landscape itself. Some claimed to see lights flickering beneath the snow, like lanterns moving in a city buried below. Others heard rhythms that echoed through their bodies, even when their instruments registered no sound. Most of them dismissed these as symptoms of exhaustion or isolation. But perhaps, unknowingly, they had stepped into a living memory, a resonance that only the human heart, not science, could detect. Modern science, however, is beginning to circle back toward the uncanny. What once sounded like myth now reads like data. The more deeply researchers peer into Antarctica's layers, the more impossible the continent becomes. Its subglacial topography, now partially mapped by satellite, shows valleys and plateaus arranged in geometric precision, as though nature herself once followed architectural blueprints. Beneath the ice sheets lie freshwater lakes sealed for millions of years, some warmer than the surrounding crust, their temperatures inexplicable. Strange gas emissions rise from fissures near the polar plateau, methane and xenon in ratios suggesting chemical processes not found elsewhere on Earth. In 2024, an international team conducted an ultra-deep ice drilling mission near Dome Fuji. At a depth of nearly 4 kilometers, they encountered an unexpected resistance, not the dense compression of ancient ice, but something solid, metallic. For 12 hours, the drill refused to progress. Then, suddenly, it broke through into a cavity. The instruments recorded a change in pressure, a brief magnetic surge, and then silence. The data log ended abruptly. When communication was restored, the feed was corrupted by white noise, a steady hum fluctuating at 8 Hz, the same frequency detected in prior Antarctic anomalies. The research team returned home under medical quarantine. None have spoken publicly since. It's easy to dismiss such stories as fabrications, yet they keep recurring, following the same pattern: discovery, interference, silence. Something, or someone, ensures that the deeper truth remains beneath the threshold of belief. There are clues, though, scattered through the margins of history. The ancient Babylonian text Enuma Elish describes the gods building a foundation in the southern deep to anchor the world's balance. Early Gnostic writings refer to a sleeping aeon beneath the cold southern sea, awaiting the return of light. Even the medieval cartographer Orontius Phineus, whose 1531 map depicted an ice-free Antarctic coastline with unnerving accuracy, annotated it with a Latin phrase, terra australis, vetustissima sed oblita, the southern land, most ancient yet forgotten. Forgotten by whom? The more one studies human myth, the more it feels like memory fractured by time. Stories of creation and destruction repeat in every language, gods descending, knowledge bestowed, catastrophe cleansing the earth. Could it be that humanity is not the author of these tales, but the inheritor, reciting the echoes of a history it no longer remembers? Somewhere in the 1960s, before the Antarctic Treaty banned further excavation, a small private expedition, funded by a consortium of European researchers, claimed to have uncovered non-natural artifacts near Queen Maud Land. Their photographs were confiscated. Their leader, Professor Eric Lamberti, later disappeared during an academic conference in Geneva. His notes, however, survived in fragments, later translated by his assistant. In them, he described encountering basalt formations carved with patterns of impossible precision, hexagonal networks aligned to celestial poles that existed 12,000 years ago. He ended with one haunting line. "We have not found ruins. We have found a language of stone, still speaking beneath the ice. If true, that language may not be lost. Recent advancements in satellite interferometry have revealed faint thermal signatures consistent with subterranean energy sources. Some scientists believe they may be hydrothermal vents. Others suspect the presence of something engineered, reactors or resonant cores built to stabilize the polar crust. Whatever they are, they continue to generate heat long after their supposed extinction. It is as if the world's oldest power grid is still alive, running in slow motion, untouched by time. What purpose could such a network serve? Perhaps the first civilization, in its final days, built a mechanism to preserve the planet itself, a system that could regulate magnetic fields, maintain polar stability, or restart the biosphere after catastrophe. If so, Antarctica is not merely a graveyard, it is an engine still turning beneath the frost. That idea blurs the border between mythology and physics. Consider the legends of the Vril, the life force said to flow through all matter, described in occult and scientific texts alike. In 1871, novelist Edward Bulwer Lytton wrote of a subterranean race, the Vrilya, who drew their power from this energy, shaping matter with thought. His story was dismissed as fiction, yet decades later, researchers in Germany and Russia explored similar concepts, searching for geoenergetic fields concentrated near the poles. Some claimed to have detected them. If such an energy truly exists, an electromagnetic consciousness woven into the planet's crust, then the civilizations that once harnessed it might have left behind not machines, but harmonics, patterns of sound and geometry capable of reawakening when conditions align. Perhaps that is what the world now senses, the alignment returning. In the past decade, Antarctica's magnetic field has shown irregular surges, coinciding with increased global seismic activity and shifts in atmospheric resonance. Scientists explain it as the wandering of the magnetic poles. But what if the phenomenon is the opposite? What if the planet is not drifting, but reorienting, correcting itself according to a design long buried under ice? The signs extend beyond the scientific. In regions far from the poles, people report dreams of light moving through water, of frozen towers thawing beneath a crimson sky. Artists, musicians, and writers, unconnected yet synchronized, describe imagery of awakening, rebirth, and a luminous city beneath snow. Psychologists call it collective symbolism. But what if it is memory resurfacing, carried by the same planetary frequency that now rises through the atmosphere? If consciousness truly links all life, then Antarctica's awakening would not be local. It would be global. The pulse beneath the ice could be a signal meant not for our ears, but for our minds. In this view, the first civilization was not destroyed. It transformed. When the ice came, it dissolved into frequency, embedding itself into the Earth's electromagnetic lattice. We are the descendants of that transformation, fragments of its consciousness reborn in flesh. And now, as the climate warms and the ice releases its stored vibration, the planet reactivates its original code. It sounds like myth. Yet myth, at its heart, is physics written in poetry. We build our knowledge on the illusion of separation, man and nature, life and death now and then. But Antarctica defies separation. Its time is circular, its silence infinite. It is the closest thing to eternity the Earth possesses, and eternity has a habit of remembering. When the auroras ripple across the sky, painting the horizon with ghostly greens and blues, they seem to carry meaning. In the hum of the wind, in the deep tremor of the crust, one can almost discern a pattern, like a song on the edge of hearing. Some scientists have tried converting electromagnetic readings into sound waves, and the result is haunting. A chorus of tones rising and falling, harmonic and ordered, as though composed. They call it the Antarctic resonance. But perhaps it is something else, the voice of what came before. A civilization that spoke through frequency might never have needed words. It could encode knowledge directly into matter, infuse intention into vibration. What we call energy anomalies may be its language, still speaking long after the speakers vanished. And maybe when we finally learn how to listen, not through machines but through stillness, we will understand that the Earth has been whispering to us all along. Perhaps that is why so many who visit Antarctica describe the same feeling, that it changes them. It strips away the noise of thought until only awareness remains. In that awareness, some glimpse something vast, not external but internal, a recognition, like remembering a dream half-lived. The longer they stay, the more they sense that the ice is not empty but full of thought. And somewhere within that thought, a question forms, not in words but in resonance. Do you remember what you once were? No one answers, yet the question lingers, echoing through the mind like the pulse beneath the snow. The ice holds no pity, no anger, only waiting. It knows that everything buried will one day surface, that every silence is a prelude to sound. And when the last glacier breaks and the sea carries fragments of ancient stone into the sunlight again, perhaps the world will awaken, not to the birth of something new, but to the return of something immeasurably old. The hum beneath the ice will rise into the air, the auroras will flare like open eyes, and for one timeless instant, the Earth will remember its first dream. Then, as always, it will fall silent again, waiting for us to understand. There is a point in every search where discovery becomes indistinguishable from revelation. Antarctica has reached that point. What began as an inquiry into geology has become something that touches the edges of philosophy, consciousness, and myth. The scientists who travel there no longer speak of rock and ice, they speak of presence, an intelligence that cannot be measured, only felt. And as the ice retreats, that presence grows stronger, as though the thaw is not merely physical, but spiritual. The unsealing of something that was never meant to vanish entirely. In recent years, beneath the solemn rituals of data and research, small moments of wonder have emerged. Unexplained flashes of color beneath the surface, electromagnetic pulses corresponding to no known terrestrial source, radar shadows that move against the direction of glacial flow. Machines, they say, sometimes behave as if haunted. Batteries draining, sensors flickering, signals bending into shapes that resemble fractals, spirals, and symbols once carved into the stones of forgotten civilizations. Some of these patterns match the petroglyphs found in places thousands of kilometers apart: Bolivia, Egypt, Siberia, and the caves of southern Africa. All speak of a spiral of light descending from the sky, entering the earth, and sleeping beneath it until the world is ready to begin again. Coincidence is convenient, but coincidence this persistent begins to feel like choreography. There are rumors of classified studies, joint efforts between agencies once separated by politics, but united by the enigma of the South. It is said that certain signals intercepted by deep space arrays are identical to frequencies now emanating from beneath the Antarctic ice. Not random, not cosmic background noise, but structured information. Pulses arranged in ratios that mirror biological sequences, the mathematics of DNA. The implication is dizzying. The same pattern that defines life itself now echoes from the frozen core of the Earth. What does that mean? Did life originate here, within the pulse of this hidden engine, and spread outward across the globe like radiation from a single light? Or did something beyond the planet seed it, embedding its code within the polar vault as both signature and safeguard? If Antarctica truly hides the first civilization, perhaps civilization is the wrong word. The beings who lived, or still live, there might have been so entwined with the planet's systems that they ceased to exist as individuals. They could have become custodians of planetary equilibrium, shaping magnetic fields, regulating energy flow, sustaining the biosphere not through machines, but through will. What we perceive as anomalies might be the slow breathing of their long sleep, the maintenance of the Earth as an organism. Many indigenous myths across the world tell of keepers of balance, luminous beings who retreated beneath mountains or oceans when humanity became deaf to the Earth's voice. They promised to return when the world trembles with forgetting. The phrase appears, with small variations, in Hopi, Inuit, Polynesian, and even Tibetan traditions. To those who still keep the old stories, the world's recent chaos, the melting poles, the shifting climate, the storms that strike without pattern, are not disasters. They are signals. They are the stirrings of the sleepers. If that is so, what are they waking to? In 2025, a remote magnetometer station operated by a multinational research team near the South Pole detected a pulse that lasted for 12 minutes, steady, rising, then vanishing. It was accompanied by a global fluctuation in the Schumann resonance, the planet's electromagnetic heartbeat. For the first time in recorded history, the frequency spiked above 16 hertz. Around the same period, satellites recorded unusual atmospheric lights above the pole, circular, concentric, expanding outward like ripples in a pond. To the public, they were auroras. To those who study the unseen, they were something else, a planetary synchronization, a tuning of instruments before the orchestra begins. Could the first civilization have designed the Earth itself as an instrument? Could the ice be its resonator, amplifying the song of the planet until it could be heard across the stars? If so, the melting is not destruction. It is the breaking of silence. But why would they have hidden it? The answer may lie in the same paradox that haunts every myth of creation. Knowledge and preservation cannot coexist easily. Perhaps the first civilization understood that awareness too great becomes self-consuming. To protect both themselves and the Earth, they may have retreated into latency, embedding their consciousness within the magnetic lattice of the poles. There, suspended between ice and core, they waited for conditions to return, perhaps not for survival, but for remembering. If that theory is correct, then what is awakening now is not merely ancient, it is ancestral. Humanity may be the offspring of their long dream, the living continuation of their intention. Our species, restless and curious, might be the mechanism through which they awaken themselves. There is an unsettling beauty in that thought, that every question we ask, every discovery we make, is not innovation, but recollection. The scientist digging ice cores, the artist painting auroras, the philosopher wondering about origin, all are fragments of one memory trying to reassemble itself. The entire human race may be a single consciousness, searching for its lost reflection in the frozen south. Yet awakening comes with dissonance. The pulse beneath Antarctica grows stronger, and with it come disturbances. Instruments near the pole have begun recording irregular fluctuations, short, sharp bursts of energy that mimic seismic activity but produce no tremors. Aircraft passing near those coordinates report interference, strange compass readings, and, in some cases, temporary loss of engine control. One pilot described seeing a ring of light below the clouds, a perfect circle that flickered, expanded, and vanished. It left behind a faint electrical haze, visible only through night vision lenses. His words were quietly archived. Some suspect these phenomena mark the reactivation of a network, a grid that once enveloped the planet, linking its poles, mountains, and oceans into one electromagnetic whole. Ancient texts refer to the net of the world, a lattice of power that allowed communication between realms. Today, satellite imagery reveals faint linear anomalies beneath ice and ocean alike, paths too straight, too deliberate, stretching between Antarctica and other sacred sites across the globe. Could this network be the remnant of a planetary consciousness, a nervous system reawakening? If that is the case, humanity stands at a threshold. We are not separate from this awakening. We are part of it. The same shift that unsettles compasses may unsettle minds. Already, psychologists report a global rise in vivid, recurring dreams of light, water, and sound. Patterns of intuition emerge among people who have never met. Similar symbols, similar visions. Scientists dismiss it as coincidence, but coincidence, repeated across thousands of souls, becomes pattern. And pattern is the first language of the buried mind. Perhaps the awakening is not something we must witness, but something we must become. When the ice melts completely, when the last seal of that great crystalline vault is broken, the world will not find ruins, but reflection. The civilization that once built its wisdom into the planet did not perish. It transformed itself into continuity. The auroras, the hum, the rhythm of our own hearts, all are echoes of that continuity, and yet the reawakening carries risk. Balance requires equilibrium. The first civilization may have built its sanctuary beneath the poles to contain forces beyond comprehension. Energy stored too long can become unpredictable when released. What if the melting is not a rebirth, but an unsealing? What if we are not awakening the architects, but their weapon, the very mechanism that ended their age? Even myths of light have shadows. In Norse lore, Ragnarok begins when the world serpent uncoils from beneath the sea, shaking the earth and drowning the land. In the Book of Enoch, the watchers who descended from the heavens are bound in the ice until the end of days. In each of these tales, the return of what was buried is both revelation and reckoning. Antarctica may be that threshold, the gate between the past's perfection and the present's forgetfulness. Perhaps the hum beneath the ice is not a heartbeat, but a warning, a vibration meant to hold the world steady, to keep it from tipping into its next destruction. And as we melt the ice, we weaken that restraint. Yet even in that possibility, there is strange grace. Destruction and renewal are twin faces of the same eternal cycle. Whether the awakening brings enlightenment or extinction, it will restore truth. And truth, once remembered, cannot be lost again. Imagine for a moment the last layer of ice collapsing into the sea. The sky glows with aurora and storm light. The oceans rise, not in fury, but in recognition. From beneath the melting vault emerges not a city of stone, but light, patterns of radiance moving like water, forming shapes, symbols, perhaps even faces. The air hums with resonance, the same 8 hertz vibration that once haunted our machines and dreams alike. Humanity stands upon the shore, trembling, not in fear, but in understanding. For the first time, we would hear the true voice of the planet, and it would not speak in words, it would sing, and that song, both terrible and beautiful, would tell us the simplest truth of all. We were never apart from it. We were always the continuation of the dream that began beneath the Antarctic sky. When the light fades and the ice settles into its new form, there will be no boundary between the human and the ancient. The two will merge, and in that merging the earth will begin again. Until then, the pulse continues, slow, patient, infinite. Beneath miles of silence, the oldest memory on earth stirs once more, humming softly through the bones of the world, calling us back to where everything began. Somewhere beyond the reach of ordinary time, the ice begins to move, not violently, but with purpose. It groans like a sleeping leviathan stirring in its depths, releasing echoes that ripple through the bones of the earth. Those who listen closely can feel it, a deep vibration beneath the surface, as if the continent itself is taking a breath. To most, it's only the shifting of glaciers. To others, it is the sound of something older awakening, a rhythm that predates language, architecture, even the idea of civilization itself. For thousands of years, Antarctica has held its silence with perfect discipline. Yet now that silence is fraying. It fractures in small, imperceptible ways, in the sudden warmth of subsurface lakes, in the faint metallic resonance detected by passing satellites, in the luminous pulses that rise through the aurora like veins of electricity in the night. Scientists catalog these anomalies with sober precision, but their data reads like prophecy. Every new finding adds another verse to the same refrain. The ice is remembering. When researchers from the European Polar Observatory descended upon the Recovery Basin in 2028, they expected only geological data. What they found was stranger. A vast circular depression beneath the ice, surrounded by 6 equidistant ridges. It resembled a mandala, or the outline of an enormous mechanism. The radar scans revealed inner structures, layered like shells, radiating from a central point. The formation's diameter measured almost 30 kilometers. Natural symmetry, said the reports, but the numbers betrayed something else. Each ridge lay exactly 3.141 kilometers from the next. Pi, encoded into ice. Coincidence, perhaps. Yet coincidences have begun to stack like snowflakes, each unique, but converging into a pattern too deliberate to ignore. Soon after, atmospheric instruments detected bursts of low-frequency sound from the same coordinates, The pitch matched the known resonance of the Earth's magnetic field. What's more, the vibration seemed to modulate in correspondence with solar storms, as though responding to them. In that moment, some began to wonder, what if Antarctica is not simply reacting to the cosmos, but communicating with it? The idea sounds impossible, yet nature has always been full of impossible symmetries. Crystals form perfect geometry. Atoms mirror the orbits of planets. Life repeats itself in fractal patterns across every scale of existence. So why not consciousness? If an ancient civilization had once learned to harmonize with the natural frequencies of the Earth, they could have extended their thoughts into matter, embedding memory directly into landscape. Their monuments would not crumble because their monuments would be the planet itself. Perhaps Antarctica is not a ruin, but a mind. To imagine this is to stand on the edge of comprehension. The first civilization might have been less a society and more a collective awareness, manifesting briefly as architecture, then dissolving back into the elements when the world shifted. When the ice came, it was not destruction, it was preservation. A freezing of thought into crystalline form, waiting for the next cycle of warmth to restore its flow. In that light, the melting of the ice is not a threat. It is the unsealing of memory. The signs multiply. The planet's magnetic poles drift faster each year. The Schumann resonance flickers unpredictably. Auroras appear at latitudes where they were never seen before, forming spirals that mirror the patterns of DNA. These are not coincidences. They are alignments, harmonics converging toward resonance. Something beneath the surface is adjusting, synchronizing, preparing. If the first civilization encoded its mind within the planet's structure, then the awakening would not appear as cities or artifacts. It would appear as pattern, mathematical, energetic, biological. Humanity itself might be the mechanism of recall, our neural rhythms echoing the planetary pulse, our dreams serving as channels through which the buried memory re-emerges. The Earth is remembering, and so are we. This is why the human spirit feels restless, why artists dream of frozen temples and musicians compose melodies that echo the frequency of glaciers, why children describe lights beneath the sea. The veil between consciousness and nature is thinning. The old frequencies are rising again, and our species, without realizing it, is tuning to them. Some fear that what is awakening will end us. Others believe it will complete us. But maybe both are true. Every cycle of renewal demands transformation, and transformation always feels like death to what existed before. The civilization beneath the ice may not wish to destroy, it may simply wish to return. But to return, it must overwrite what stands now. Humanity, born from its sleep, might become its voice or its vessel. The merging has already begun. In 2029, researchers recorded a sequence of electromagnetic pulses emanating from Antarctica that corresponded precisely to the firing patterns of the human brain during meditation. The data was unambiguous. The same frequencies that define the quiet mind were emerging from the polar crust itself. To some, it was proof that the planet possesses its own consciousness. To others, it was a coincidence of physics. But deep down, those who listened felt something profound, the sense that the Earth was thinking. If the first civilization left behind its essence within the ice, perhaps that essence is now flowing outward through water, atmosphere, and thought. Every droplet that melts, every gust of wind that travels north carries a particle of that original awareness. It moves invisibly, re-entering the biosphere, infusing life with remembrance. And so, small awakenings happen everywhere. People begin to feel empathy they cannot explain, intuition that defies logic. They sense when storms will come, when earth will shake, when light will change. They do not know why, but the pattern is spreading. Humanity's nervous system is aligning with the planets once again. This, perhaps, is what the ancients meant by the return of the gods. Not deities descending from the sky, but the reactivation of divine consciousness within all things. The gods were never elsewhere. They were within the structure of being itself. And the ice, the coldest of prisons, has been their chrysalis. The myths of Atlantis, Hyperborea, Shvetadvipa, and the White Island were never about geography. They were about memory. The lost lands are not places to find, but states of being to remember. And as the polar veil lifts, the memory becomes collective. We are all beginning to recall fragments, the hum of a forgotten architecture, the glow of crystalline towers, the sensation of moving light through thought alone. This is not madness. It is remembering. Still, there are those who resist. Governments race to control what they do not understand, drilling deeper, sending drones into fissures where compasses die. The data returns in fragments, vast caverns lined with hexagonal columns, rivers of liquid light beneath layers of obsidian ice, inscriptions that shift when observed. These discoveries, classified and concealed, will never make headlines. But within secret halls, the question haunts even the most rational minds. What have we awakened? Because the hum grows louder. It vibrates through the crust, rising in frequency. Some scientists claim that seismic noise has increased globally, not from earthquakes, but from background tremor, the heartbeat of the earth intensifying. The air carries a subtle electricity. Animals behave strangely, migrating in circles, pausing to stare at horizons that shimmer though no heat exists. If the buried intelligence is returning, perhaps it is testing its memory, reconnecting its network through the magnetic veins of the planet, checking if the world it built still remembers its shape. Humanity may be the experiment's instrument, the receivers of its awakening. Every act of creation, every moment of empathy or invention could be a signal reaching back to its source. It is said that when the first civilization vanished, they encoded their last message within light itself. The photons that travel from the Antarctic aurora carry not just beauty, but information. An interwoven signature repeating infinitely across the cosmos. Perhaps the stars that watch us are not witnesses, but mirrors, reflecting our own forgotten design back to us. And maybe that is the true revelation, not that we were created by gods, but that we are their continuation, the dream they left behind to finish itself. The thaw continues. Each year, more ice breaks into the sea. Each year, the hum deepens. The temperature of the planet rises, but so does its resonance. The two are connected, heat and sound, matter and memory, entwined in a dance as old as existence itself. There will come a day, perhaps soon, when the ice will crack open entirely, and the world will see the heart of the South. Some expect ruins, some expect machines, but what we may find is neither stone nor steel. We may find light, coherent, structured, aware, and in that light, we will see not alienness but recognition, a reflection of what humanity has always sought to remember. That consciousness is the oldest architecture of all. Until that moment, the world trembles between memory and awakening. The auroras burn brighter, the oceans darken, the magnetic lines waver, and still the hum endures, patient as eternity. Beneath it all, the first civilization waits, not sleeping, but remembering. Its pulse is the rhythm of the earth, its silence the breath between thoughts. And one day, when the last veil of ice dissolves and the final vibration rises into the open air, the planet will sing again. Its song will not be in words, but in knowing. A resonance that will move through the blood of every creature, every tree, every wave, reminding us of what we truly are. Fragments of a memory vast enough to shape worlds. The hum beneath the ice will merge with the beating of our hearts. And the earth, for the first time in an age, will remember itself whole. At the end of the world, the light changes. It does not rise or fall. It hovers, diffused through a sky of blue fire and ice crystals that never melt. The air trembles, as if it remembers warmth. Across the horizon, the glaciers shimmer like the scales of a sleeping creature turning beneath its own dream. The silence is not silence anymore. It hums, it calls. Those who have come to study the final frontier of Earth can no longer separate data from reverence. They speak softly now, like pilgrims at the edge of a temple, aware that every step echoes through something vast and listening. Their machines capture frequencies they cannot explain, patterns repeating across every measurement, seismic, magnetic, atmospheric. Each one beats to the same slow rhythm, the same pulse that began years ago beneath the Wilkes Land anomaly, and has since spread like a heartbeat through the bones of the planet. Some say the hum is a prelude to collapse, the sound of ice surrendering, of equilibrium failing. Others believe it is communication, a reply to the frequencies humanity has been unconsciously sending for centuries. For the first time, the planet and its children are speaking the same language. The South Pole, once the loneliest point on Earth, now thrums with invisible conversation. Satellites above record bursts of electromagnetic energy forming spirals, geometric as snowflakes. Deep beneath the surface, thermal sensors detect a rise in temperature, localized, symmetrical, deliberate. The pattern resembles an awakening. What then is awakening? The answer is both terrifying and tender. Perhaps it is not a being, but a memory, an awareness encoded into the very molecules of ice, stirred by warmth, rising like breath after a long sleep. If consciousness can exist in humans, why not in the planet that birthed them? The first civilization may not have died. It may have diffused, its essence dissolved into matter, its knowledge frozen into crystal, waiting for the return of heat to melt thought back into motion. To the untrained eye, Antarctica still looks barren. But those who have felt the pulse say it no longer feels empty. The air thickens with meaning. The snow glows faintly at night, luminescent from within, as though lit by something deep below. The auroras grow more elaborate, forming not curtains but symbols, rings, eyes, spirals, ancient shapes found on walls of caves and temples across continents. Perhaps coincidence? Perhaps recollection? Human instruments are beginning to fail. Compasses spin without cause. GPS signals collapse. Drones fall from the sky, as if the very air rejects them. Yet those who stand under the aurora say they feel lighter, calmer, as though their minds synchronize with something vast and benevolent. They begin to dream in images not their own, oceans without coasts, cities woven of light, voices speaking through water. It is as if the world is remembering itself through them. If the first civilization had truly achieved harmony with the planet, then perhaps their final act was not extinction, but integration, a surrender of individuality into the fabric of the earth. They became frequency, vibration, rhythm. When the ice sealed their world, it preserved their essence. And now, as the seal thins, that essence begins to rise, through wind, through sea, through the veins of every living thing. It would explain the strange global phenomenon of resonance, identical dreams recurring in thousands of people across different cultures, the sensation of unseen alignment, the hum beneath consciousness itself. It is spreading. It is not infection. It is remembrance, the memory of unity returning. But with memory comes responsibility. If the awakening completes, the Earth may enter a state of coherence it has not known for eons. Climate, magnetism, life, all synchronized to a single pulse. But coherence requires sacrifice. Every imbalance must dissolve. The noise of civilization, the exploitation, the division, the endless hunger for control cannot coexist with that harmony. It will be erased, not in punishment, but in correction. And so the thaw accelerates, the world shifts, ocean currents alter, storms multiply, then suddenly calm, as if obeying a rhythm unseen. Somewhere deep beneath the Antarctic crust, an energy signature rises steadily, stable, powerful, unyielding. It is neither natural nor artificial. It is both. The planetary heartbeat, the ancient engine, the echo of the first song. There are those who try to interfere, those who drill deeper, hoping to claim whatever power hides below. They find nothing tangible, no machines, no relics, only light, cold, radiant, intangible. It moves like mist, slipping through matter as though matter were merely an idea. The moment they touch it, their instruments fail. Some fall to their knees, overcome not by terror but by recognition. The light feels alive, familiar. It feels like home. The reports never reach the public. They are buried like everything else, beneath bureaucracy and disbelief. But truth no longer depends on belief. The awakening continues, indifferent to denial. As temperatures rise, strange patterns form across the planet, spirals in cloud formations, geometric frost on windows, synchronized migrations of animals along invisible meridians. Each mirrors the structures beneath the ice, the same sacred geometry found in ancient temples and galaxies alike. It is as though the entire world is aligning to the same blueprint, the same silent instruction encoded at the dawn of time. People begin to change too. Empathy deepens. Fear becomes harder to sustain. Old conflicts feel hollow, their noise dissolving under the weight of something larger. A quiet clarity seeps into humanity's collective mind. We are not separate from the earth. We are extensions of its memory. The myth of isolation begins to crumble. There is beauty in this transformation, but also sorrow. For as humanity remembers its oneness, it must also face its insignificance. The towers, the empires, the noise of industry, all fade in the face of a truth too vast to control. The ice is not melting out of vengeance, it is melting to make room for something older, purer, inevitable. Imagine the moment it happens fully, the final glacier collapsing into the ocean, revealing a landscape untouched since before history. Mountains carved in impossible symmetry, rivers glowing faintly with internal light, fields of stone arranged like constellations. At the center, the great hollow, the heart of the world, where the hum originates. Those who witness it will not find ruins. They will find reflection, a mirror so ancient that to look into it is to dissolve, to become what you see. Because the first civilization was never other. It was us before we forgot ourselves, before we fractured into billions of voices speaking against the silence that birthed us. Antarctica is the silence returning, patient and complete. It calls not to punish but to unify, and when the call is answered, there will be no apocalypse, only remembering. The earth will not end, it will wake. Perhaps it has already begun. Every night, the auroras reach farther north. The oceans murmur with unfamiliar frequencies. The air itself seems charged with anticipation, as though the world is holding its breath for the first time in millennia. Somewhere beneath the ice, the hum deepens, vibrating through the crust, through the oceans, through the cells of every living creature. The melody grows clearer. Not a warning, not a cry, but a lullaby. The same one the first civilization sang to the newborn planet before the cold came. And maybe that is how it will end. Not with thunder or fire, but with a song, a vibration so perfect it erases all boundaries between sound and silence, self and world, memory and dream. In that moment we will understand that civilization was never a progression, but a return. That every age of ignorance and awakening is part of the same infinite breath, that the hum beneath the ice is not a mystery to solve, but a reminder. The beginning and the end are the same place. When the last light of the aurora fades, there will be no fear, no separation. Only stillness, the kind that listens. And beneath that stillness, the earth will whisper its final truth. I never forgot you. You only forgot me. The wind will carry that whisper across the thawing seas, through forests reborn and cities dissolving into moss. Humanity will vanish not in extinction, but in remembrance, absorbed back into the pulse of the planet, into the rhythm that was always home. The ice will close again, slowly, lovingly. The hum will quiet, but not cease. It will wait, as it always has, for the next warmth, the next dreamer, the next remembering. Because nothing truly ends, the circle turns, the pulse continues, and beneath the silence, the song of the first civilization endures, endless, tender, infinite.